Okay. We're going to wait for a few more minutes.
I'll just say thank you.
He came out of subcommittee yesterday, and it only needs to agree in the Senate. So, that's why
I'm happy to go last. Statewide.
Burns say he didn't want red meat. Like I think that we need to call him out. Big fight for red
I just want to see that smile again. That's all.
All right. Are we ready?
So I got to wear red today, tomorrow.
Where's Dave?
Friday.
Where's Dave?
right there.
Dave, are we ready? Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. 1 week ago today, the FBI and the Trump DOJ carried out a raid in Fulton County Elections Hub. They took nearly 700 boxes of documents containing sensitive voter information and all the original ballots from the 2020 election. This is a blatant attempt by our federal government not just to interfere with Georgia's elections, but to take them over. When President Trump is talking about nationalizing elections, he is talking about Georgia. Let me be clear about something. This is not normal. We are living in unprecedented times, and the continuation of the great experiment that is our democracy is at stake. The worst thing that we can do as a society, as a state, and as leaders under this gold dome is to underestimate the threat. My name is Syra Draper, and I am the Chief Deputy Whip of the Georgia House Democrats. My colleagues and I are here this morning to sound the alarm, but we're also here to connect the dots. The decisions about Georgia coming out of Washington are not divorced from the decisions being made in Georgia by Georgians. Silence is complicity, and there are actors here who are not just encouraging the takeover of our elections, but are facilitating them too. The public deserves to know who is actually fighting for fair and free elections. So let's start by hearing from Representative Deborah Bazemore.
Good morning, and thank you for my colleague, and she laid the groundwork. I want you to know, as the Vice Chair of the Fulton County delegation, we are working hard and constant to make sure that whatever was taken from us is secure. There has been a motion that has already been filed from our Fulton County government to make sure that we get our ballots back intact and not changed. Why are we constantly revisiting the 2020 election? We have been here before. We have already had this dealt with several times. We have recounted and recounted and had audits. And we know what the outcome was. There was no fraud. If there was fraud, it could not just apply to one person, because all of us that are state legislators and any office in 2020, we then would have to run again, and we're not legal. They were proven to be legal, and there was no fraud found. So please know that we are standing together and we are fighting to make sure all of our Fulton County constituents have a fair, secure, and just election. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Stacey Evans. I represent House District 57, all City of Atlanta, all County of Fulton. I want to take a moment to speak to the voters of Fulton County in the state of Georgia, because I can understand that you are nervous and scared when you see federal agents in black FBI vests with giant enterprise vans taking your ballots. Do we know that the federal government has access to our personal information? Of course we do. But do we think that they have it tied to the ballot that we cast? Of course not, because we vote behind a curtain. It is guaranteed that we have privacy in who we vote for. Now we are all understandably nervous that there will be vindictive action taken from our federal government when they are able to place our name next to our vote. So I understand that you are nervous, and I understand that this is upsetting. We are too. And I want you to know that your national elected officials that represent the state of Georgia, your state elected officials that represent the state of Georgia, and particularly Fulton County, your local elected officials, we are fighting with every tool we can pull out of our toolbox. But we need you to fight too. There are two ways. One, continue to show up and speak out. Write your elected officials on both sides of the aisle and let them know that this is not America. This is not how we treat the vote. But also, vote in numbers too big to suppress. Check your voter registration now. Check it in a month. Check it in another month. You make sure that you are registered and you have everything you need to walk into that ballot office and cast your ballot, so that you have everything on your side, so that they cannot at all contest your ability to be there to vote. And vote in numbers too big to suppress. Thank you. And now I would like to bring up State Representative Gisler.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start by sharing a bit of my own history or my own background. For 25 years, I've worked in financial services technology and online banking and insurance systems. These are industries where protecting personal information is not optional. It's existential. Throughout my career, I've received extensive training in personally identifiable information, or PII, as it's known in cybersecurity circles, and on the consequences when that information is mishandled. In cybersecurity, PII is often called the holy grail for identity thieves, because once it is exposed, the harm cannot be undone. Much of the information collected during voter registration in Georgia, secured by the Secretary of State, and now being demanded by the Department of Justice, is clearly PII by any reasonable definition. Georgia law is unambiguous in this point. The Secretary of State is required to safeguard that information and may only release it under specific circumstances for specific lawful purposes. Senate Republicans have now passed a resolution urging the Republican Secretary of State to turn that data, your voter information, your personal data, over to the federal government, even though doing so would violate Georgia law. I want to acknowledge that the Secretary of State has so far done the right thing by refusing to break the law, and I wish to express my gratitude and my support. Today, or actually earlier this week, I filed a resolution, it's H.R. 1200, that simply reaffirms existing Georgia law. It states plainly that releasing this information would violate state law, breach the trust of Georgia voters, and unnecessarily expose their personal data to risk. This resolution should not be partisan. It should not even be necessary. It is a statement of what the law already requires. Last Thursday, I announced my resolution on the floor of the House of Representatives and invited bipartisan co-sponsorship. No Republican members from the House chose to co-sponsor, so I filed it with only Democratic support with many of my colleagues that you see behind me. Let me be clear, it is unethical to pressure a constitutional officer of the state to knowingly violate state law. If the Republican Party believes that Georgia should change its laws to allow or even compel the release of sensitive voter data to the federal government, that debate belongs here in the General Assembly and not in public view and not in political pressure campaigns. Upholding the law should never be controversial. Protecting voters' personal information should never be partisan. If we excuse breaking the law today because we like the requester, we won't have the authority to object tomorrow when we don't. Thank you.
We're fighting for what's left of our democracy on multiple fronts. It's not just the Trump administration who is responsible for this. The Georgia State Election Board is also responsible. They have interfered with our elections before, and they are doing it again now. The State Election Board is an administrative body that has worked for years in the background. They did the job that they were tasked to do. But ever since the board majority was taken over by Trump sycophants, they have done everything in their power to cause chaos in our elections. In the months leading up to the 2024 elections, they pushed forward a slate of rule changes over the outcry of election officials and experts who said those changes were not possible so close to an election. Lawmakers told them, including Republican lawmakers, that their actions violated the law. But they ignored everyone and they pushed forward full steam ahead. In the end, it was only the courts that constrained them and prevented them from causing chaos in the 2024 elections. But they're up to it again now, folks. Let me connect the dots for you. The State Election Board has been trying to reopen an investigation into Fulton for the 2020 election for months. They got slapped down, so now they are trying a different tact and they are asking their friends in Washington for help. The election denier movement in Georgia is taking credit for providing the Trump DOJ with the information that led to the warrant that permitted the FBI raid. This information, by the way, is the same information that has been debunked time and time again. Members of the SEB are now openly talking about taking over Fulton County Board of Elections. And let me be clear, that has been the point all along. The election denier aligned members of the Georgia State Election Board want to control Fulton because they want to control the outcome of the 2026 elections. They know that if they control all the votes coming out of Atlanta, they can control every single statewide race on the ballot. They are so scared of Republicans losing power in the midterms that they are going to take over the largest county in Georgia by force. That is something you do when you cannot win on the issues. And here's the thing about election deniers. The North Star for an election denier is simply whether their candidate won. If their candidate lost, the election must have been rigged. There must have been fraud. If their candidate won, the election was fair. That's why they are obsessed with the 2020 election. Apparently, Georgia had great elections in 22, 24, and 2025. That is why there is no amount of fact, reason, or evidence that will convince them that the 2020 election was fair, because their metric of fairness is not the process, it is simply the outcome. There is no integrity in this position. Election deniers on the state election board have proven themselves time and time again to be dangerous to our state and contrary to our interests, and we must hold them accountable.
Thank you, Rep. Good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Olalier, state representative serving parts of Atlanta and East Point. And I, like many of you, are deeply disturbed and angry at the events that took place last week at Fulton County's elections office. The politically motivated FBI raid and seizure of almost 700 boxes of voter ballots that include names, addresses, and dates of birth is a dangerous abuse of power. It undermines the integrity of our future elections and is simply wrong. You know, I have the daily task and joy of raising 2 young boys. They are headstrong, curious, and at a stage where pushing boundaries is part of the norm. And it is my job as their parent to clearly delineate right from wrong. I tell August and Anthony all the time, God gave you eyes for a reason. Use them. Don't follow the pack. Think critically. And don't be afraid to stand up and speak out when a wrong is left unchecked, even if it means standing alone. To all Georgians and Americans, this is a moment that requires courage. This is a moment that requires honesty. Whether you are a Democrat or Republican, call Fulton County or some other part of the state home, now is the time to do what is right. We can't teach and instill values in our children that we ourselves won't live by. No longer can we take directions from DC to drag us back to the past instead of focusing on what matters most right now. Housing, people can afford. Costs, families can handle. Health care, Georgians can access. Communities free from chaos, and our civil liberties, which we won't compromise. Republicans, Democrats, citizens, now is the time for courage. Now is the time for honesty. It's time for us to stand up and speak out so that we can get back to the work of the people, not the work of one man. Thank you. That concludes our press conference. We will transition to Q&A. Oh, I'm sorry. Rep. Willis?
Good morning. I am Representative Inga Willis, Chairwoman of the Atlanta delegation, representing District 55. In conclusion, this recent obsession that we've seen with our voter rolls is not by happenstance. It is very strategic. How goes Fulton County? Possibly so goes the nation. We will not go quietly into the night. This is not about proving the results of an election that have been proven again and again and again to be one of monumental loss. This is not what this is about. This is about voter rolls and federalizing a process that should be handled at a state level. We are here at the state legislature in the People's House. We have been sworn in to represent our constituencies to do just that, to step in when something needs to be done, to make adjustments in the law if something needs to be done. And this is ironic coming from a party that was once obsessed with local control. But all of a sudden, when it comes to Fulton County, with midterms approaching and an outlook looking bleak because the people are tired and the people want change and the people want something different, all of a sudden we're obsessed with the voter rolls of Fulton County. Well, we've got news for you. In Fulton County, we will stand our ground. In Fulton County, we will do what needs to be done and fight back. In Fulton County, in Atlanta, Georgia, representing voters who walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, who were steeped in civil rights, like my parents and people behind me who came from people who fought for freedom. We will not go quietly into the night. We will stand. We will do whatever needs to be done to protect the voting rights of the citizens of Fulton County who are now afraid that their information has been compromised. So as we stand in this legislature and in closing, this session, this time, this moment, we will act locally, but we will pay attention to what happens nationally, because we know how goes Fulton County, so goes the United States of America. Thank you for your time.
We'll now open it up to questions if there are any. Yep. The question is, we raised the concern about Fulton County being taken over. What are some of the other concerns we have? And I welcome anybody to chime in that wants to. Look, I mean, I cannot count the number of times I have heard the phrase, we need to increase confidence in our elections in this building. We have passed so much legislation based on this justification that we need to raise confidence in our elections. What does it do to voter confidence when the people who lost the 2020 elections continue to spin conspiracy theories and doubts about what happened in that election? They cannot let go. And to be clear, it is not a sincere effort. There is no actual belief that Trump did not win in Georgia. That is not a real belief, because if you follow the facts show clear as day that Trump lost here in Georgia in 2020. Anybody who is serious about reviewing the facts knows that there were 3 counts of the ballots in Georgia. There was an audit of the ballots in Georgia. There were 60 cases filed in the courts challenging the elections in 2020, all of which failed. There was an independent investigation of Fulton County held by a bipartisan committee that absolved Fulton County of any kind of systemic voter fraud. Anybody who is looking at the facts knows exactly what happened in 2020 in Georgia. So this attempt to spin up conspiracy theories and lies and misinformation about the 2020 election in Georgia is not being done in good faith. It is being done to sow doubt, and it is laying the groundwork so that when they lose in 2026, they have something to point to. That is what this is about.
Come up. But what I'm going to address right now, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The response is simply this. Elections are reserved for the states. And so Republicans who say that are shirking their responsibility to the people of Georgia. It is our responsibility to protect our citizens. This is not just about Fulton County. This is about every voter in Georgia. Fulton County is where it starts. And we want to be where it ends because we have a responsibility and we are not afraid to stand up for the people that we represent.
And to our leader's point, those of you that don't know, it's been proven that Trump would have lost even if he won Georgia. So I don't understand what his fixation is on Fulton County. The other thing I just want to remind you, some of us sit on governmental affairs and they are trying to make sure it is more difficult for you all to vote. We have a meeting today at 3 o'clock in governmental affairs. We need all voices in that room to make sure you hear and understand what is being done.
Can I take one more question? So have we heard about the possibility of any arrests coming from this investigation? So yes, I mean, that is certainly, we have heard that. Trump has suggested that there could be some prosecutions in Georgia following the review of the ballots. What do we know? The ballots have been reviewed many, many times. Any kind of investigation would not be because of legitimate information that is now discovered, but because of a political witch hunt. I do think that Trump has never been able to get over the fact that not only did he lose here in Georgia, but there were Republicans in Georgia who said no to him. And we know that Trump is vindictive. I would not be surprised if he followed up on his vindictive nature, and I think everybody is prepared and waiting with bated breath. Thank you very much.